All right, so really excited to have our first national speaker call. We have three amazing youth leaders here from St. Louis Park, Minnesota, and our messaging coordinator, Maddie Atkins, who will be the moderator. St. Louis Park was one of the earliest cities that we started working with as we were piloting the iMatter program, and they just did a phenomenal job. They'll tell you more about it, but it culminated in last month, the St. Louis Park City Council passing and adopting unanimously the most aggressive climate action plan in Minnesota. I would guess right now it's tied. Grand Marais has done the same. But so what they're going to do is tell you about the process and how it got there and answer questions you have. So with that, I will turn it over to Maddie.
Hi, everyone. So as I said, my name is Maddie. I'm currently in Portland, Oregon, or actually Eugene, Oregon, going to University of Oregon right now. I'm a freshman. And I know that we've already kind of introduced our speakers, but I'm just going to go around and have each one of them say their name, location again, and then their year in school, and briefly just why this cause of fighting climate change matters to you. So we'll start with Jane.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jane again. And I'm from St. Louis Park, but I'm currently studying at Stanford University. I'm a freshman, and let's see why I got involved. Climate change was always my passion in high school, and so I was really involved in a lot of environmental organizations, and that's kind of how I got connected to iMatter, which I'll talk more about in a little. So this has just always been what I'm interested in and what I'm studying in school, so yeah.
Thanks, Jane. Katie, what about you?
Hi, I'm Katie. I am in St. Louis Park, and I'm a junior at the high school. And I got involved actually just this year in like September, I think. And I got involved because it's always something that has been really interesting to me, and I really, really love the city that I live in, and it's really important to me that other people be able to enjoy it in the future.
Beautiful. Lucas.
Hey y'all, I'm Lucas. I go to St. Louis Park as well. I'm a senior. And I've always been really passionate about the environment as well. I've always lived a very large portion of my life outside, and I've spent a lot of time facing a lot of the climate issues that our future generations are going to face. And I got involved 4 years ago now. Yeah.
Thanks, Lucas. So now I'm going to pass it over to Jane, and she's going to just spend a couple minutes giving you some background about the Roots and Shoots Club at the high school and kind of the history of that club and how this small high school club got connected to iMatter and eventually was presenting a report card to their city council, grading them on how well they were responding to the climate crisis. Jane?
Okay, yeah, so it's kind of a nice little history that we have here, how Roots and Shoots is the environmental club at St. Louis Park High School, and it was one of the smallest clubs, I would say, when I was a freshman at St. Louis Park, had a couple members, and so that were all seniors when I was a freshman. And so when they graduated, it was kind of like it was up in the air as to what the future of the club was like. And so I was always interested in joining, and I sort of gathered a bunch of my friends together and we kind of revamped the club up. And our AP environmental science teacher from freshman year was the advisor. And so the club kind of formed around a lot of people that I knew would be passionate about the same issues relating to climate change and the environment. So then we kind of got the club going again my sophomore year of high school, and we focused on maintaining the composting program in the lunchroom and holding a fundraiser to like get money. But it was all sort of like, I don't want to say not meaningful, but we wanted to do more. So it was kind of, it was just kind of centered around the school at that point, but we wanted to do more. And at the same time, I was also on St. Louis Park's Environment and Sustainability Commission. I was on that for sophomore year to senior year. So then, and that was filled with just adults and then me as a high schooler. And so I was really able to make connections through that. And that's how I met Larry, actually, was another commission member introduced me to Larry. And because I kind of knew what I was involved in at the high school and thought that iMatter would be a really good organization for us to collaborate with. And so I met Larry one day and he told me about what iMatter was, and we talked about what Roots and Shoots was and what we were interested in and how we were looking for the next thing to really make an impact as a high school club. And so that's how, and Larry started coming to our meetings before school. And so then the campaign, I guess, started when we were gathering data to create this report card that Maddie mentioned, where we graded the city on different aspects of sustainability through like energy usage, recycling, different categories. And we were able to get that data relatively easily because I, again, was on the commission and had adults that had access to that. So then that was sort of our first step in the campaign, was creating this report card. And that was sort of like one of the main things, like the main point of our presentation when we presented to City Council, is we had a physical report card saying, like, here's what your grade is, sort of old-fashioned style, like here's where you're doing well, here's where you're not doing so well. And that was sort of the start of our campaign.
Thanks for that background, Jane. So just a quick reminder that if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand or send them in the chat, and you can feel free to ask questions at any time during this presentation. But we're going to start with talking about this idea of presenting to City Council, which is something that I think makes iMatter and our campaign really different, because you don't often see young people showing up in City Councils and giving presentations. And so I just had a few questions for you, Jane. What did the experience for you feel like going before City Council for the first time with the report card?
Yeah, so I was definitely nervous. It was very intimidating to go in front of a bunch of adults in your city, your city leaders. But and I remember I was the first person that spoke when the four of us presented. So it was kind of like, I don't know, that was like the first thing that was being said. I was like it was intimidating as a high schooler, but I felt like we were really prepared and we really knew what we were, and we had gained a lot of student support through petitions after we created this report card. And so we really had a lot of people supporting us, and we felt very strongly about our cause. So sort of like getting over just the normal, like the normal intimidation that people feel like in public, really there for a good purpose, and it was really meaningful. So it was one of the like best experiences that I ever had in high school, because I felt like it really showed like how we were able to take a high school club interest and really expand it into our city and surrounding community. So it was one of my best experiences in high school, for sure.
That's so cool. And so you guys brought a resolution with you, right? And what did the resolution ask for?
Yeah, so the resolution basically outlined sort of our asks for the city, and it kind of came down to, we wanted them to agree to become carbon neutral by 2040, and that was sort of the overarching ask. And then another main part of it was to include youth in any sort of climate action and in achieving carbon neutrality by 2040, and achieving net zero emissions from electricity by 2025. But the main goal was sort of the net neutrality by 2040 with youth involvement.
And that's a pretty huge ask too. I mean, that's not any small order.
Yeah.
So after you guys presented this report card, how did you and the team go about getting that resolution passed?
Yeah, so I think for a while after we presented the report card, we were really we were excited about how well it went, and then we realized, wait, that didn't really bind them to anything. They had to pass it and then go and even pass the climate action plan. So there was a lot of passing and voting that had to happen. And so after a while, we started like showing up to city council events. Like we sat in on some meetings, and would ask questions. And I remember there was one moment in a meeting in City Hall where Owen, who's not here but was one of the speakers initially, just raised his hand and asked, so have you put voting on the climate inheritance resolution on the schedule yet? And like the city managers just kind of wrote down quickly that like, oh yeah, we need to do that. So we kind of like, we're kind of in the background at events that were happening to really just sort of keep people like on check for like what we initially asked for, because I think maybe that's one of the concerns that people have, is that youth have all these great ideas, but then it's just sort of ideas, but we really wanted to show that we were following up and that we really cared still about what we initially presented to them. And so we just kind of had to stay on them for a couple months.
That's incredible, because that's such a huge key. You can't just show up once. You have to show up, as annoying as it is, like over and over and over again. So when you finally returned to city council and they passed the resolution, what was that like?
I think that was sort of a big moment of relief for all of us, because I think if we had gone back and they had not passed the climate inheritance resolution, I think we would have been left with the question of what now? What do we do? We're really lucky because St. Louis Park is a very progressive city, and like many of the city council members were all familiar faces, so that just made it like a more personal issue, and it was just like a more personal connection that we had with them. And so I think we were really lucky that they were so willing to pass it, and so that was amazing. And I feel like I expected them to, not just because it made so much sense to me, like that they should, but also because like of who our city council members are. But it was still definitely a moment of relief, because there was some doubt in there just because they have so many other things to do. But it really gave us a place to like start working even further from there, because that was sort of like the first base that we had to cover.
Lucas, you were there when that resolution was passed as well, right?
Yeah, it was really powerful, especially the comments that City Council gave to us afterwards. I just remember thinking that they kind of felt they not only trusted us, but they were grateful for us being there almost, and it's almost like they were waiting for someone to step up and take the opportunity, because they were open to ideas and possible plans for carbon neutrality and aggressive climate action. But no one really stepped up and gave, this is exactly what we want. This is the grade that you got, and you need to do better. And we really outlined, like specifically, our resolution had 3 points to it, and it was simple, it was clear, and they understood that, and they really appreciated that. And they really appreciated that it was young people. And yeah, it was really inspiring. I remember. Yeah.
That's really cool. Katie, were you involved in the club at that time as well?
It was not. I remember hearing about it and being really happy, and I knew a lot of people in the club, so I was not involved yet.
But it is a cool thing to hear about, a bunch of young people going to city council and passing something real, like an actual piece of policy. But Lucas, you mentioned that the city council was really receptive, and I think as we're talking about this journey to this landmark climate action plan that you guys have recently passed, I think I'm wondering like what the process of creating the climate action plan was like, working with the city council, and what the dynamic was of working with adults on this.
Yeah, so one of our points in the resolution was that they had to keep youth involved, and that was kind of the key aspect of this whole campaign that we wanted to do, and the part that iMatter really engraved in our campaign is that we really wanted to stay involved, not only begin the movement and begin the thinking and the forward progression of this, but also be in the process and like even be there after the plan is complete. So yeah, I attended many meetings where it was a group of volunteers who was, they essentially created the plan. We got together, it was like 10 people, and we'd meet every so often, and it was a consultant from an organization that the city hired, and that person worked with volunteers, including youth, including myself, to create the climate action plan and kind of what they wanted from us and what the youth gave from that was just kind of the vision that we wanted. That we didn't have the data or the details or how exactly we were going to get there, but it was our future, and so they wanted our perspective on how we wanted to shape the vision for us, for our future in St. Louis Park. So that was really cool. I really appreciated that. I remember it was really powerful. Yeah, I remember, and I wasn't the only student there. There were a few students that would show up, and it was really great. It was really great, and it would help spread awareness too, because it was just such an amazing landmark that St. Louis Park was creating, and that we were involved in the actual writing of it. It got boring and extensive at many times, but yeah, it was really, really interesting to see how it all, it came to be, I guess. Yeah.
And Lucas, I really love this story of that final study session right before the Climate Action Plan got passed, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, yeah, it took a long time to write the Climate Action Plan, and too long, in my opinion. And then the voting didn't happen until a couple months after the Climate Action Plan was completed. But finally, we did have a study session, and the study session was to discuss the plan. And it was at the table that we sat around on a table. It was the whole city council, the city manager, and myself, the consultant that wrote the plan, the St. Louis Park Environmental Commission liaison, and the president of the Environmental Commission. And so it was us four who presented the plan, and it was about an hour-long discussion where each council member had very extensive questions, very extensive concerns. But it was really cool because I got to address a lot of the questions that they were putting forth, because I had been involved in the process for over 2 years now. And yeah, because there were some council members that were also new, that they got on the council as this plan was being created, so they didn't know the whole story. And so it was really interesting, just giving my perspective, I guess, and showing them what kind of power the students had, because in the audience of the city council study session, there was a lot of the students from our club, so that was really great.
That's really cool that you were sitting at a table with all of these key constituents. And did they decide that night that they were going to vote on the plan?
Yeah, essentially. Someone brought it up. They're like, okay, well, I think the real question is, when we're going to vote on this, and I'm ready to put it on the agenda for next week. I remember I got chills when that was said. It's literally been something I've been working on for 2 years, and I'm only 18, right? So it's like a long time for me, and definitely the project I've been working on and I've spent the most part of my life on. So it was really powerful. So they decided then. Yeah.
That's amazing. And Katie, were you a part of the club at this time?
No, I was I got in towards the end, kind of as they kept pushing the voting back.
Okay.
No, that was the
actual.
Were you there? It was recently. This one was the one that you weren't on the commission yet, but you were on the club, and we were working on it, I'm pretty sure. No? Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, Jane, what was it like for you to be far away and hear that the Climate Action Plan had finally passed?
Yeah, it was really amazing to hear that it passed. I remember once the YouTube video of it was up, I stayed up to watch it and watched everyone speak and watch the city council members, because I was really excited. And it was just really nice because I felt kind of when I was leaving, it was a little bittersweet, because I knew that they were in the process of developing the Climate Action Plan and it wasn't just going to stop. But as Luke was, there had been hopes to be able to vote on it. I remember talks to even vote on it when I was still in the commission, before I left. And so I was hoping ideally I'd be able to celebrate sort of before I had to go to college, but that didn't happen. I knew it was still going to happen, so I wasn't too like distraught over the fact that it was never going to happen. I knew that it was just going to take longer, which I think was reasonable to expect. But it was really amazing to know that things are still going on at home.
That's awesome. I love that video to watch the city council videos and the presentations and what everyone says. Now just kind of reflecting on this whole process, and it's been different for every single one of you, which is what's kind of amazing about having all of you on this call here today. But first, for each of you, I want you to think about what the most challenging part was for you about this campaign, or what doubts that you had, and just kind of sharing that with us. And maybe we'll start with you, Lucas.
Yeah, I guess doubts and just kind of things that we came across as a club and working with the city council. I mean, yes, I know that after like 2 years and passing a 72-page plan that's like the most aggressive in the state it's really amazing, but we could have done better. And just the fact that, attending that city council meeting where they took half an hour, and within half an hour they were like, okay, let's vote, and they all voted unanimously. And to think that like in just half an hour you could, approve such a plan that will like articulate what the city will look like for decades to come was just shocking to me, because we had spent 2 years working on the plan, and I mean, obviously it took time, but the fact that the council could just, pass this one thing and in 30 minutes, I was like, wow, like it's really frustrating that other people aren't doing this. And so that was kind of really eye-opening for me. I remember just the time in general, I guess, and then realizing that, that this is like super feasible and really, really possible for a lot of cities, states, and nationwide. It can happen. I thought that was really eye-opening and powerful to me. So I don't know, something I came across, I guess. Yeah.
It's almost like a hopeful challenge, though. So
yeah.
Yeah, if people rise to the occasion, then we can get things done. Katie, what about you? What's been challenging doing this work?
I think probably just looking at like the time aspect of it and how long everything takes and how long the process is, because I think kind of as I got involved with the club and I initially started talking about like adopting it and voting on it, I swear this already happened. And when I talk to people outside the club that have heard about it, they're like, yeah, I thought that already happened. Like, you've been working on that forever. That aspect of it was frustrating, but I understood it at the same time. I'm glad they were thorough, but.
Yeah, everything I feel like that is worth doing takes a lot of time. But yeah, especially in high school, I think. 2 years we think doesn't sound like a lot, but in high school, that's half of the time that we have there. And so, yeah, it would make sense that would feel like a really long time. Jane, what about you?
Yeah, so I'll touch on some of like the challenges that were more in the earlier stage. It was just kind of logistically, it's hard working with a high school club to get a lot of meaningful change to happen like in your community. It really is. Sometimes I think that like, people always say like a bigger group of more passionate people, it's very great, but then sometimes it was very hard to like actually get things done. You need a few committed people to like really go do things, go get petitions from students in the lunchroom every day for like 2 weeks, or really show up to this meeting or make this call. I think there are a lot of there are sometimes challenges with accountability and making sure things happen, and it's high school, people have 100 things going on. So there were just a lot of like logistical challenges too, with like people being on different places of commitment and what they wanted to see happen. And like, obviously everyone wanted the same goal in the end, but there was just a lot of challenges of like, who was going to make things happen to get us there. But of course we overcome it in the end, but it was definitely like, there are some challenges there. That's
real. And for you, Jane, so you started this campaign. This was something that you put a lot of your heart and energy into. What was it like to have to leave it behind when you went off to school and then to pass it on to someone else and hope that they would continue it?
Yeah, I was pretty bummed to have to leave this behind. because I think that there's a lot of good things happening in St. Louis Park. And of course, like, no one wants to leave something that they started unfinished. There's something unsatisfying about that. And so, yes, I would have loved to be there. But of course, like, the work's not finished. It won't be. And so really, like, there would be no time to like leave when it's over. And of course, there were some concerns about the fact that since I sort of started this campaign, a lot of the people that I had gathered were my friends in my grade. And so there was sort of a big group of us leaving at the same time. Of course, I had faith in Lucas to really sort of carry this on. So I knew that it was in good hands. But yeah, it is hard to leave something and not really know what's going to happen when you're gone, when you were like, you felt that you had such a role in it. But it's been great here because I know that I was going to a place where I'd be able to really further my ability to do more work like this too. So it's like, there were pros and cons to both of it. But I knew that it was in good hands with Lucas and he would be able to get people to join and help.
There are absolutely pros and cons, and it's cool to see that you're doing amazing things. But I also totally agree with that sentiment that you said, that the work is never done, even after you guys have passed this climate action plan. We'll get to that later. But Lucas, what was it like to pick up an effort? And you were kind of an interesting position because you got to see things kind of start from the beginning. And so maybe you did still feel like you had a sense of ownership, but what was that like to kind of carry on someone else's vision?
Yeah, it was definitely a moment of transition, and yeah, most of our club, if not like 80% of it, were seniors, and they left the club, and I was kind of left there like, wow, like there are only a couple people left, and I really don't know, hopefully we'll get some more people to join, but then we'll have to kind of start from scratch in the part of like inspiring them and getting them to realize, the work that has been started before them is going to be really meaningful in the future. And I think Katie can talk to that a little bit more too, because I'm one of the last, or one of the only seniors in my in the club, and Katie's grade really stepped up, and they've kind of been the grade from 2 years ago when we had, or from last year when we had just like 10, 15 people from one grade. And yeah, the grade below me really stepped up, and I honestly didn't do much recruiting at all. People just kind of heard about what was going on, and with the really high turnover and all the people leaving, that there was this really, really crazy transition where people just brought in new opinions, new strategies, new concepts to tackle the same problems, but with like a new lens. And that was really interesting because I kind of had to adapt my leadership based on what other people were excited about. Like one thing that's really unique to our club now is, and Katie can talk to this more too, is like really specifically, Katie and like a few other members are really, really involved in nutrition and like veganism and vegetarianism, and that's something that they've brought to the table for like everything that we do. They look at what we do through that lens, and so that's really interesting because we kind of have to adapt like the way we work based on that. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, Katie, maybe you can talk more about like what the future has to hold, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I think like it was really intimidating, especially just like going to my first meeting, and it just seemed like everyone who was talking, who had been involved for a few years, like knew what they were doing and were really up to date on what was going on. And then I got there and I was like, wow, like I barely know a lot of these people's names. Like, how am I ever gonna like get involved with this? How can I ever be like a big part of this? And it was, and I definitely saw that transition. I'd heard that a lot of people were leaving, so kind of coming in on that was interesting, and I felt there was space for us to, like Lucas said, bring that new point of view in. So yeah, it was cool to see the work that that everyone else had done in the past few years, and to learn about that. And I felt like every meeting that I thought I finally knew what was going on, I'd learned something new, and it'd change what I wanted my goals to be for the club, and what I wanted to do, and how I thought we could achieve the goals that were kind of laid out for us.
So speaking of that, what is next? What's in store for the Roots and Shoots Club in St. Louis Park?
Well, the thing that we've been working on a lot lately is we're doing a launch for the Climate Action Plan on Earth Day, actually. It's going to be really big. We thought that although it feels like inside of our club, like it's like the only thing we're focusing on, and so we obviously know a lot about it, but the rest of the community probably doesn't know quite as much as we do about it, and especially the businesses in St. Louis Park, and we kind of need the community to be involved for us to actually reach the goals that were laid out in the plan. So we're having a launch at the Rec Center on April 22nd, and we're going to have speakers there and resources for businesses so they can start becoming more sustainable and reducing their carbon footprint.
That is so, so cool. It is so cool to see how, this just continues. The work continues. There's always something to be done. And it's amazing that you are making it your own, Katie. Now I also just want to go back around to each of you and ask what one piece of advice you would offer to other young people who are looking to do this kind of work, looking to jump into climate activism, and what you would tell them. Maybe starting with you, Jane.
Yeah, so I guess my piece of advice is really just to actively seek out your opportunities in your area, and just to take risks, and you don't know really what's going to happen. Like I said, I always knew that I was really passionate about the environment, and that's what I wanted to study in college. And so when I saw the opportunity at starting at your high school club level is really just, it can't get easier than that. It's at your school. And then I learned about the commission through my neighbor and just joining that with a bunch of adults was a big risk. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And then I also had no idea that I would meet Larry. I think take risks and seek out your opportunities, because then something even better will come from it. I don't know if I would have heard of iMatter, maybe because I try and pay attention to those things otherwise, but things will come that you didn't even expect if you just try a bunch of things and actively seek out the opportunities that are in your area.
That's great advice. Lucas?
Yeah, one thing I would say is that as a teenager, I really feel like our opportunities are really limited, and there are a lot of people out there that have so much passion and so much energy stored up inside them, ready to just take it out on the world. And if you lead something, and if you are someone who wants to start something, people are going to step up no matter what. If it's something that people believe in, then they're going to step up, because especially as young people, that's what we do. We take it into our own hands. We make ourselves accountable, because it's our future. And I think that's something really unique to all young people of this generation, is that we've really taken initiative in making it our problem, making it a problem of our future. And I kind of saw that as the transition happened when Jane and the seniors left last year, and I didn't do I didn't do any recruiting, and so many people came and joined the club, faces I've never seen before, because simply they had heard that change was happening. And that's something that's so powerful, that if you really can, if you're able to say that you're making a difference, then people will follow you, people will step up. And that's kind of the opportunity we're giving the community too at this launch, is we're giving the businesses in the community an opportunity, a place to step up. So I think, people will step up.
I totally agree with that. An earlier iteration of the iMatter campaign had this first step be that you had to first find your team. And I think even Jane spoke to this, is that sometimes it's harder to work with a team, but I think, Lucas, you're really nailing that on the head. And when you say that, like, if you just get out there and start making change happen, people will notice. Katie, what's your advice?
I'd say kind of similar to what Jane and Lucas were talking about is like, don't be afraid to jump into situations you're unfamiliar with, because not people don't know as much as you think they do, and they'll listen to you if you just keep pushing, and especially as youth, our opinion is important and people will listen. And yeah, so like, even though you haven't been studying this for like 20 years, we are the future, so our opinions matter, and what we have to say is important and is worth considering.
I love that. I've also been in the position that you were, where you walked into the room and it seemed like everyone else knows more than you do. And so I think that's super important to remember, is that, like, it's our future. We know all we really need to know. You know, we're the moral authority to speak on that. But circling back to this idea of that, when you start making change, people take notice. And I think we really saw that example apparent when, you know, generationally in the high schools, you know, Jane and Lucas passing it on down to Katie now, there have been just successive generations of high school students taking on this work, but not just in like the high school and in that same St. Louis Park region are people being inspired by the change that's happening here. And I actually, Olia, you can totally say no, but since you're on this call, I just wanted to introduce all of you to Olia Wright, who actually is one of our amazing youth leaders in Minnesota. And she got connected to the St. Louis Park team when someone who knew her in Citizens Climate Lobby told her about the iMatter campaign and thought she might be interested. And so it's one example of how the St. Louis Parks impact has spread even more. And when you hear about what Olia is doing, you will really feel like, oh my gosh, wow, this is like a movement. Olia, if you want to talk about a little bit about what you've been doing and what you've done and what you are doing now.
Sure, I can say a little. So as Maddie said, I'm Olia Wright. So I have a group called the Norton Nature Group that I'd started a few years ago. And as Maddie said, someone told us about iMatter. And we had been looking for ways, because we wanted to do something more than just going on hikes and planting trees and so forth. And so we got involved with iMatter. And through the process that the St. Louis Park people talked about, we gave our city a resolution, which they actually passed on the spot. And we're currently working on developing our climate action plan, which is getting our city of Grand Marais to net zero emissions by 2040, as St. Louis Parks has. Yeah, is there anything else you want me to say, Maddie?
Well, that's, first of all, amazing. And then second, talk a little bit about this electricity summit that you're planning.
Yes. So we're planning Southern Minnesota Youth Clean Electricity Summit. It's going to be on April 14th at the Rochester Public Library. And we are trying to connect out to other youth in Southern Minnesota whose power is provided by Southern Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, because over half of their electricity is generated by coal, and we want them to switch to more renewables. But Grand Marais is the only one currently putting pressure on SMPA. That's the acronym for Southern Minnesota Municipal Power Agency. And so we're trying to get other communities that get their power from SMPA to put more pressure on them so they will switch to renewables. So we're just trying to get other youth in other communities to start campaigns with iMatter.
It's so cool. Thank you so much, Olia, for sharing. I know that you weren't prepared and I just totally put you on the spot. But yeah, Olia is amazing. And what's so inspiring to me about this story is that it started all in St. Louis Park with these amazing young people, but that because of the work that they were doing, it spread. And it's not just Olia and Grand Marais, it's a bunch of cities around Minnesota, youth who are empowered by seeing other youth step up and give them a blueprint. And it's really amazing. And it's sort of even become a blueprint for other cities all around the country. And so I think it's definitely one way that we can see that this iMatter campaign can spread Oh, yeah, Larry just chatted me that both Leahs on the call are actually nearby St. Louis Park. So we actually have a lot of young people on the call from Minnesota in the area. I think my last question is going to be, and I can also open it up for questions from the rest of the group. But for each of you, what has come after this, both for you personally and the impact it's had on other people and communities? And it's sort of something that we've been talking about. And even how this has changed your perception of what kind of impact you can have in the world, or what kind of impact you want to have in the world, or what you want to do in your lives, just how this process and this campaign has changed your life and the lives of others in ways that you've seen. And we'll start with you, Katie. How about?
I think the main thing it's done is that it's given me kind of like the feeling that I have a voice and that what I have to say matters, and that I can do more than just not that they aren't important, but just things inside the high school, and I can impact the community, state, and anything bigger you can think of. And I think it's really showed me what's important to me about what I want to do in my life, and it's made me think about starting to do important things before I even graduate, because I felt like for a while I kind of only felt like I could do important things after I took advanced classes in high school, and after I got my bachelor's, maybe my master's, and then maybe my opinion mattered. But I realized that it can matter right now if I want it to.
I love that so much. I am stuck in the same track right now because I thought, after high school, then maybe, but now I'm getting my bachelor's degree, maybe then, but no, you're so right. That's beautiful. Lucas, what about you?
Yeah, I just have something that kind of ties in with the advice part too. So my friends call me something, I don't know if they made it up or whatever, but they call me a yeser. And it's just something like someone who just says yes a lot, someone who just like accepts, if someone wants something, then I'll give it to them. Someone wants something a certain way, I'll like allow it to be like that because they're my friend or whatever. But what iMatter has taught me is that, we can change what is acceptable, what is meant to be accepted, and what you should say yes to and what you shouldn't say yes to, because we can change how the system works, how the system, like from the ground up, we can change what's politically possible. And in Edina right now, we've been facing, a city in Minnesota, we've been facing this problem where the city council is kind of like, well, we have these goals in place and these strategies in place, and they're not working, so why should we set more aggressive ones? And that, it like makes sense at first, but when you think about it, we can change everything. We can start from scratch. We can come at this problem with a different mindset, a different perspective. And if you have youth on your side, then you have huge advantage, and you have super big potential on how successful your campaign ends up being. And that's something hopefully that Edina pushes for, because I think a lot of people can take that and use it to their advantage. Just not being a yeser, not saying, okay, that's fine, we understand where you're coming from, and we will stop coming to city council and talking to you. So like coming back and being persistent is something that I'll take like forever in my life, definitely on things that really matter to me, on something that's as important to me as my future.
That's a really great lesson. What about you, Jane?
I think for me personally, I gained a lot of confidence in just like thinking like what I'm able to do, and just like a lot of experience, and that has especially been helpful coming to having sort of experience with what I know I'm passionate about and what I want to study and do for the rest of my life has been really reassuring. But I also think it was like a really big confidence boost even in high school, because when you find your sort of niche of people that has similar beliefs as you, and you're able to like act on the thing that you're like most passionate about, I just think that's when like people are really able to like flourish, and it's like really a good time for them like in high school. And I just think that was a really important experience for me to be able to have that and like do something meaningful. So it was like a really big area of personal growth for me before coming to college. And just reiterating what Lucas says, I think it's really important that like when you recognize that something that's been in place, like it's like system for a long time is wrong, like you need to do something about it. You can't just stay back and like watch things that have been going the old way keep happening when something's not wrong. So I just think it's been really great to like see sort of how you can shift the sort of system that was in place for a long time and like work with adults. That's been really amazing too. I think it's good for any young person to be able to collaborate with adults and sort of like come to an understanding of generational differences, but like there are a lot of similarities between us, like no matter what age you are. So I think that has also been really important part of this experience. And yeah, just like being in college right now, it's just made me even more sure of what I wanted to major in. And like I knew sort of what I wanted to study coming in here, but having that experience under my belt has just made me more like aware of my opportunities here too in college. So
That's so cool. I just want to thank all of our speakers and open it up to the rest of you guys. If any of you on the call right now have any questions for our speakers. But yeah, just wanting to give them a big thank you for being on the line and telling us the story. And if anybody has questions, you can just go off mute and ask.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can one of you talk about what it was like being involved in the process of creating the climate action plan and what that looked like?
It was a really long process, and so the city council, the first thing that they did was they hired a consultant from this organization called the Great Plains Institute, and this woman had different access to like data that the city didn't have, and different things that she could use to her advantage in creating this plan. Honestly, I was very confused a lot of the time at these meetings that I attended. And really it was getting a lot of public opinions and visioning from the students as well on kind of what they wanted the city to look like. But it ended up being mostly her that wrote the actual plan and with the details. I mean, obviously edited by us, but yeah, I guess the city took initiative and they hired someone. So.
I'll just add too that even that now that I'm thinking back on getting that push to even hire a consultant, like required sort of, I mentioned earlier, like you kind of had to like be in the background and kind of like shove the city council in the right direction every once in a while. And I remember when they finally passed the climate inheritance resolution, it was still again like that was not it. Like there was still more that had to be done. And so there was again like a lot of passing, a lot of voting. They had part of the climate inheritance resolution that I didn't like mention before was that they had to start acting within 30 days. And so I remember like 28, 29 days coming around and I to the mayor and like all the city council members and was just like, hey, friendly reminder that you have a couple days to like start acting on the thing that you passed. And so then that's when they sent out big email looking for a consultant to write a climate action plan. So yeah, that was just sort of another little push that was needed to even get that process going that I forgot to mention before.
Does anybody else have any other questions? All right. Well, I want to thank all of you for coming. And being a part of our first speaker call, and these are going to happen every single month with different speakers, just as a way for young people in the community to get together online and get inspired about awesome climate work that is happening and that can happen in the future. So thanks all of you for coming. And thanks to our amazing speakers too. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, Maddie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Maddie.